Hello and welcome to the Homeless Consultants channel. My name is Paul B. I am the Homeless Consultant, and this is going to be a second follow-up on my junk science case study on coronavirus, since it offers a more abundant validation of everything I have said in my junk science videos than anything else I could look at. I have to leave the other window open. On the one hand, you're going to capture the noise so you can get a sense of just how busy it is here, despite the so-called lockdown that cost me my job. All these people are out driving around in convertibles and motorcycles. All the gangbangers are out there with their boom, 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 boom cars and stuff like that. But more than anything, since I can't open this window, it's more than 90 degrees in this car, and I am just... I can't open that window. I haven't had a shower now in 10 days, with no end of that in sight, thanks to the Minnesota stay-at-home order. What I'm going to do here in this video is... I'm not joking, friends. There is so much here. I can't do it all. I just can't. I'm going to go through a list I've put out where I know I have some graphics to put with it. So there's going to be some heavy editing on this video. The purpose of this is to help you understand what's really going on here with this health scare, for one thing. But also, I'm going to show you how everything I said in my junk science videos is utterly validated by this. And you know what? It should be. It's 32 years I have been researching this. I started in 1988. And I'm good at what I do. And whether I live in a car or not, the fact is, and as a legitimate scientist, believe me, I'm looking for anything I got wrong, because that's how I improve. That's how I learn and advance myself. But I can't find anything. Everything I said in my junk science videos is playing out right before our eyes. And I published those videos before you had heard of coronavirus. So let's get right to it here. Again, this is kind of all over the place, but if you stick with me, I think you're going to kind of get the feel for what's really happening with this scare. Now, I've told you already how in Minnesota with this stay-at-home order, that cost me my job, because of the 100 or so people in our office, every one of them could work at home, but I can't because I have no home. So I'm the only one who lost my job, even though I'm the best employee, and even though there's an empty office where I could go in every single day and work and earn a living. But the governor of Minnesota won't let me do that. In an empty office, everybody else has their gear at home. Empty cubes everywhere except for mine. So I'm not essential. I can have my income destroyed. Being one of the most vulnerable people in society, I can be attacked that way by the state of Minnesota. Yet, among the many businesses that are considered essential and are open, such as liquor stores, Best Buy, Target, and Cub Foods. If you look at one of my videos called Cub Foods Osteophobia, you'll see what a wonderful Minnesota company that is. Don't like the homeless very much. I was trying to tell them about drug deals going on in their parking lot, and they called the police on me instead and told me not to be in their parking lot anymore. All three of those companies are Minnesota-based companies. Their headquarters are in Minnesota. All three of them are open as essential. There's people who are running cash registers, stocking shelves, pushing carts out in parking lots. They're allowed to work for a living, and a professional is not. All the others in my office are, but not me. I only repeat that to show you just how serious this really is, folks. Because if there's no basis to this, as I have said from the beginning, if there is no rational basis to this, then what has happened to me is indicative of what has happened to probably millions of Americans who are going to lose their homes and maybe worse. There's trash everywhere out here. All these people who are just totally disobeying the stay-at-home order, dumping trash like I've never seen before. Here's some video of that. Like I said, convertibles and motorcycles driving all over the place. People walking everywhere, as I open this video with. People keep approaching my car more than usual, and they always do this, but they're doing it more lately. And what they're doing, as near as I can tell, this is what I've always understood. When they approach my car like that, you know, driving and parking nearby and looking at me, they think I'm a drug dealer. They're looking to buy, and either they got the wrong address when they made an appointment, or there's something about drug dealers that they sit out and make their presence known generally. So I'm getting harassed more now with this shutdown than I did before the shutdown. That's how many people are out here, and I don't get to work for a living. I don't get to earn my own living. There was a tailgate party in the parking lot over here with children sitting on the ground, on the pavement. Show you some video of that. Crime appears to have gone up. The Harbor Freight down here, front doors are busted out and wooded up. Somebody broke in there. My mechanics, they said that someone's been out there with vehicles that are left unattended, cutting the catalytic converters off of them to sell them. And again, like I said, there's gangbangers all over the place here, drug dealers all over the place. As I speak to people out here, the vast majority, I don't know what the numbers are, but geez, 8 out of 10, something like that, think that this whole scare is just ludicrous, that it's unwarranted, that it's based on lies or misinformation, that the governor has way overstepped his bounds. He's set, I mean, the people I've been able to talk to in depth, they seem to agree, you know, there's concerns about what's going to happen in the future. When a governor can do something like that, I mean, the state could be bankrupt by the lawsuits alone after this. He didn't think things through. He had terrible advisors who have been perpetrators of healthcare fraud at least since I started studying it 32 years ago. And he made that decision to listen to them instead of researching something for himself. The future is going to be really ugly for a lot of states. Very few people am I finding at all who agree with any of this. And the ones who do, they might as well have NPR tattooed on their forehead. Nancy Pelosi and all these other opportunists, criminals basically, using their inside knowledge to buy and sell stocks and make millions of dollars. Haven't I raised the issue here when it comes to the symbiotic relationship between junk scientists and the politicians whom they own? Didn't I say in my videos how that explains a lot of why so many of these civil servants are ending up as multimillionaires on a civil servant salary? You've probably heard about that. A congressional candidate in Virginia named Jason Roberge, I believe. Hope I'm pronouncing it. He went and visited a hospital that had 800 beds, and he reported that there were barely any patients in the hotel, and they were fully stocked and supplied. Nothing to see here, folks. And I've been getting these kinds of reports all over the place. Now, if you watch the news media that is a part of this terror, this terrorization of the American people, they will find someone at least who claims to be a nurse or something and say, oh my gosh, they're forcing me to work without a mask and we don't have enough supplies. But you got to look at the source. See, the term fake news arose for a reason, because they haven't told the truth in decades. I need to point out something back from the anti-smoking. Now, when I went over anti-smoking and all these junk science videos as being one of my best examples, I never went into the science at all. I just didn't want to go there because I know how the anti-smoking industry works. There's no way I can teach you what you need to know to understand it enough so that they can come in and leave comments that sound plausible on the surface, but you have no way to research it. But I am going to give you one specific example because they're repeating it with coronavirus. You probably heard the statistics that 400,000 Americans die each year from smoking-related illness. If you haven't heard that, then you've heard that 420,000 have died every year, or 460,000, or 480, or 500, or more, or some other number. Because those numbers are completely made up, you see. That's why it's not the same number. In legitimate science, precision, remember? Precision is demanded by the scientific method. Their numbers are all over the place. They pull them out of thin air. One way they come up with these statistics is when somebody dies who is a smoker. If you're a smoker and you die, if they die of one of the things that they attribute to smoking, and remember at this point, the list of things they attribute to smoking is several hundred. Pretty much everything. There really isn't anything that's untouched. If you die from one of those maladies, like cancer or diabetes, if you die from these things and you're a smoker, the death certificate will say you died of cancer or complications from diabetes, something like that. They may, depending on how much the medical examiner is a part of the anti-smoking industry, it might say cancer due to smoking or something along those lines. But generally it's going to list the actual cause of death, which is what I've been saying all along. Cancer is what kills, not smoking, right? The epidemiologists, on the other hand, they don't take these death certificates and go, oh, cancer, and write it down. They say this person died of cancer and they were a smoker, therefore they died of smoking. Here's the problem with that. No human being has, that I'm aware of, at least the last time I checked, and remember I've been at this for decades, no human beings are actually studied here. And it doesn't matter anyway, because as I said in those videos, when it comes to something like smoking, something where you're exposed to toxins at such a level that they just don't kill you, period. If you don't believe me, go smoke a cigarette and come back, because you will still be alive enough to watch the rest of the video. When you have exposure to, you know, the what they say, the dose makes the poison, right? I mean, you can point out all these different things that are in tobacco till the end of time, but if they're not in enough quantities to hurt you, then so what? Your water has it, your food has it, your air has it, the person you're kissing, their mouth has some of it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care. If I need a good glass of water after hiking through the desert, I don't care if there's some benzene in there. I don't care if it isn't enough to hurt me. It doesn't matter. I don't care if there's arsenic in there if it isn't enough to hurt me. There's no way, with all the pollution, which I've mentioned in my videos, to prove that somebody died because they smoked. The only way you could do that is if you were God, Almighty God, the creator of the universe, and you could see two realities at the same time. One where the person smoked, and the other where the person didn't smoke. Were the outcomes different? Or did they die of cancer in both cases? Did they die of diabetes in both cases? There's no way to know. We're exposed to too much pollution in this world. It's impossible. But the epidemiologist, if you die from something they arbitrarily attribute to smoking, they will log it as died from smoking. That's where these 400,000, 420, 460, 480, 500, whatever, that's where these numbers come from. And if you think that somebody was sitting down with a scalpel and a microscope and studying a human being to get those numbers, you don't understand how junk science works. It doesn't happen, and it can't happen. There is no way to prove that somebody died from smoking. It can't be done. That's all I'm going to say on the subject. Now, look at what has been happening. Reports are finally coming out, exactly what I knew was going to happen, that the way that they have been logging people who supposedly die from coronavirus is doing the exact same thing that the anti-smokers have been doing for decades. The exact same thing. If you die from such and such and you test positive for coronavirus, the death certificate will say you died from whatever it was that actually killed you. It may or may not say complications from coronavirus, which is a guess. They don't know. But the epidemiologists, they log it in as died from coronavirus or complications from coronavirus. But what if you died from pneumonia? You died from pneumonia, not from coronavirus. The medical examiner may or may not get it right. The epidemiologist will always get it wrong because they will write it down as died from coronavirus. Again, if you're God and you can see the two alternate realities, if this person who had pneumonia and they're 88 years old, would they still have died if they never tested positive for coronavirus or not? Only God can say. They sure can't. And also, to do a medical examination of these bodies and to get the results of exactly what killed them, that can take weeks. How are these numbers coming out every day? Every single day you see that counter go up. They say, what they're telling us on the news is that, oh, everything's overwhelmed, our medical system, doctors and nurses are sleeping on the floors between shifts, getting 2 hours of shut-eye between helping all these. They make it sound like a war zone, like MASH. Just not enough beds anywhere, as that congressional candidate found, right? In a basically empty hospital. You're being lied to, people. You're being lied to the exact same way people have been lied to since public health was institutionalized in America. I tried pointing that out in my videos. My videos get 15, 20 views. So anyway, the point is there's a lot of, finally people are starting to come out with some good, strong evidence and numbers, contradictory statements. The sleuths and the investigators are getting out there. What really bothers me, though, is when I see these people coming out and exposing this fraud, and that's exactly what it is a fraud. Just like anti-smoking has been a fraud from the beginning. One that prevented us from curing cancer when we could have if we'd put our resources toward that instead of toward persecuting smokers. The thing that bothers me is that the people who are discovering this fraud and publicizing it, they keep treating it like it's something new. They don't seem to comprehend, and maybe that's where some of this conspiracy stuff's coming from, because they think this is something brand new. This is how public health works. It's how it has always worked. And I'm not sitting here saying that everybody who works in public health, every epidemiologist is a crooked, corrupt to the core. That's not the case. The problem is they're taught in a system that teaches them to do that. They don't know any better. Did you go to college? How much thinking did they allow you to do versus hearing what they told you and regurgitating it? How much thinking were you allowed to do? If you got an advanced degree, a master's or a PhD, how much thinking that challenges the status quo did you get to do? I'm guessing the number comes really close to the number 0. It's the same thing with doctors. Doctors are out there going, oh, you got to quit smoking. Smoking kills everyone, the children, we're all going to die, blah, blah. And they go on that. You pin them down and they'll admit, I've never read a single study on smoking and health. I've never looked at one. I've never validated it. I've never followed the money trail. I've never dusted for prints. I have never confirmed whether the peer review was done properly. I've got other things to do. I'm a busy man or woman. That's what your doctor says. Same thing with these epidemiologists. If they're taught to log things that way, that's how they log things. They don't even realize they're perpetrating a fraud. That's how bad our education system is. And all through this, I've been talking about, what was it, one of the top 4 existential threats to America I listed was our rotten education system. Something that the governor of Minnesota used to perpetrate. He was an educator, teaching these people who don't know how to think for themselves. And now he's in charge, and what's he do? He goes to the experts who are part of a cult, the cult of academia. Everything I said in my videos, and I published before you heard of coronavirus, is validated here, folks. Everything. $2 trillion stimulus package. I'm not going to go into that too much. I sure hope I remember to do this. I'm going to provide you a link to a podcast, the Dig It podcast. These are people who do dig for information. They dig for the real facts. And they have a section in this that explains a lot of where this pork is going. Okay, while people who have rent of maybe $1,000 a month are going to get a check for $1,000 or $1,200, and again, millions of people aren't going to get anything. Defaulted student loans, back child support, owing the government tax money, you're getting nothing. Homeless, you're getting zilch. You're getting nothing. Nothing. And then you've got all this money. $25 million went to the Kennedy Center for Arts to pay their salaries. Then they fire their employees so they don't have to pay salaries, and then they start sending out requests for donations from people, and that's called a stimulus package to help overcome a virus. You've got to see how much pork is in this. Out of the $2 trillion, about this much of it goes towards those checks for people, most of whom aren't even going to get the darn checks anyway. The rest of it is all pork for people like Nancy Pelosi. They gave, I can't even remember, $250 million or something to PBS and NPR. Some of the worst perpetrators, propagators of junk science. Some of the worst people at causing this horrible education system we have, indoctrinating people. A free press is protected by the Constitution, the First Amendment. The press is doing so much fear-mongering and lying, they are not investigating anything. Before I did this, I went to the two big papers here in Minnesota, the Star Tribune and the Pioneer Press. The headlines almost read identically. And the reason is because they're written by the same people. And they're probably the same in most of the newspapers across the country. These people aren't investigating anything. They take something off the wire, they shift a few words around so it's their own, and they publish it. They don't validate anything, they don't check any facts, they don't do anything. That's why these news reports, the headlines all look the same, and they have the same headlines everywhere. That is not a free press. That is a controlled press. One of my existential threats to America that I listed early on, back in December, was the constitutionally protected press that has been hijacked by seditious special interests. Special interests who are devoted to destroying this country. When this media does what they're doing with coronavirus, and they help to perpetrate that crime against the American people, that's no longer a free press. And in my opinion, they are no longer protected by the Constitution. They should be gone after. They should be sued into oblivion. The individual reporters should be held accountable. This goes way beyond negligence and incompetence. It goes beyond corruption. This is sedition, a capital offense. That's all I'm going to say on that for now. If you have not already, if you have any interest in this for real, I urge you to go back several videos and watch the video I made called The Great Vaping Scare of 2019. In that video, because vaping just suddenly, out of nowhere, just like coronavirus, out of nowhere, everyone started talking about vaping. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it has something to do with what I just told you. It's a controlled press. They can release a news bomb and it can just hit everywhere with the same stories that nobody's bothered to validate. In that video, I went through the Star Tribune's Pulitzer Prize winning article. I don't think there was a sentence in there that wasn't filled with either misinformation, manipulative tactics, or just outright lies. I really urge you to watch that video because it's going to help you understand a lot of what you're seeing in the news today. Because I went through news science reporting line by line and I showed you what a fraud it is. Once you understand how that works, you're going to start to recognize the same tactics being used by the media in this coronavirus scare. Please watch that video, The Great Vaping Scare of 2019. And again, one of the things I'll point out there, they used vague terms: should, may, could, might. That's junk science. Legitimate science says is. Period. But junk science doesn't do that. So they use all these vague vague terms, and they keep talking. Instead of just coming out and saying that vaping caused the death, they'll say vaping related. See, that's like their lawyers are writing the articles. That's their way of relieving themselves from legal liability. Well, we never actually said that vaping causes you to die. I mean, I guess people might get the implication from the way we worded it, but we didn't say it. We said it's vaping related. The problem is, what in the world does that mean? 400,000 smoking related deaths every year. I just told you where those statistics come from. And in this article, every single vaping death was related to somebody who was using a vaping device to use illegal drugs, not normal vaping. Pneumonia. Cause of death, coronavirus. Do you see the problem yet? Somehow I scrolled to the bottom of my page. I need to... Oh, I'm bouncing all over the place. Like a good game of Pong in the 1980s here. Let's get back to something here. Peer review. There was one article I found... or actually, I can only show you the Twitter. I mean, I just can't gather that much data. I don't have access to enough tools for that. But I think I'll show you the Twitter. This article did a study on when states will peak, according to the experts, right? But they themselves warned, hey, this hasn't been peer-reviewed yet. Do not use it to establish public policy. Can you guess what the states did? Can you guess what they did? Probably including Governor Tim Walz, an educator. What did they do, folks? They used the study to determine public policy, the one that had not yet been peer-reviewed. And if you listen to my videos, what I have to say about peer review is junk to begin with. There is no, and there will be no critical review of that study anyway. Peer review in many cases is just a rubber stamp. Now, if they do some kind of gross mismanagement, they can't even write their lies properly, yeah, even peer review might catch that and call them on it. Because they don't want to hurt their own industry. It isn't because they care about the truth. It's because, well, you can't let something be released that's that obviously a bunch of baloney. That's more or less what peer review does, is it just makes sure, well, I've looked at it. I don't think your average person could ever look at this and see through the lies. But there will be no critic review. None. No critic is going to review that and authorize its publication. Nobody who's looking for problems with the actual study. And I talked about that in my videos, didn't I? Arrogant academics. You're too dumb. I'm going to have to look this one up here. Okay, so this was actually a Twitter post, and what it was just some average Joe asking a question. This seems bogus. What am I missing? How is this being used by learned professors and epidemiology experts to browbeat us numerate and attentive average Joes? You see, he used the word numerate. Remember how I keep talking about innumeracy because of our rotten education system? People cannot comprehend numbers. They can't comprehend scales of numbers. The number of people supposedly dying from coronavirus is so minuscule compared to any standard that actually matters. What we're seeing going on in this country makes no rational sense. It has no relation. It is so out of proportion to what the reality is. But you have to be numerate and literate to understand that. And attentive, as he said. Anyway, I just thought that was an interesting post. Another thing I have said in my videos, when I listed out how to spot a junk scientist, one of the things I said was they have an answer for everything. They can't say I don't know, or if they do, they frame it in some way that makes them still sound like they know what they're doing. Well, just give us a little time, we'll have those numbers in a couple weeks or a couple months or a couple years. But they won't just come out and say we don't know and we can't know. They have an answer for everything. So I thought this was a hilarious tweet. This person said, they spelled hospitals wrong, but the hospitals across the country are so overrun with coronavirus patients that they have to let go staff. because they have no work, because of the man-made shutdown, because of coronavirus. See, nothing makes any rational sense here. I just told you about the guy who went to the hospital that was basically empty. You see, nothing makes sense, but they talk out of this side of their mouth on CBS because the topic that they're discussing at the time, goes another essential person with a nice quiet vehicle, because the topic they're discussing on NBC at this particular time, it behooves them to say that hospitals are flooded, they can't keep up anymore, the doctors and nurses can barely stay awake, they don't have enough masks. And then the same person, when they get off that, they go over here, and then they have a satellite link with CBS. And CBS is trying to make some other terrifying point. And they'll say, well, we're doing pretty good. We've got plenty of rooms available at the hospitals. We're doing okay on supplies. The same person. This is what keeps happening. If it isn't the same person, it's one representative of the CDC and another representative of the CDC. But if you don't put all these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together, you're not going to realize that they're telling you 10 different stories at the same time. You're just going to hear what they say there, and it's not going to stick in your head, oh, that person who said that, they're from the same organization that just said the complete opposite 24 hours later. You're not going to put that together if you're not attentive, if you're not a good citizen, if you're not aware of what junk science is. That's what I say when I have so much stuff, I don't even know how to present it all to you, because I know what to look for, and I'm seeing it everywhere. Everywhere. This is just embarrassing and humiliating for our species that they could fall for this. It's dreadful. It's dreadful. Let's see here. Computer models. Oh boy. Computer models. Well, I'm not going to go into that too much depth. What's the point? One of the main reasons for this shutdown in Minnesota, the one that cost me my job, not every single other person I work with, including the people who had just started there 1 or 2 weeks earlier. Every single one of them still on the job. But me, the guy who was one of the first people working there when the business started, I have more tenure than just about anybody there. I'm out of a job. Why? Because Governor Walz listened to the experts who brought along their little suitcase full of computer models. Here, Governor, let me open up this box and pull out the computer models and tell you how it is and how it's going to be. I started programming computers before my family ever had a computer, back in the 80s, by borrowing them, by learning how to do it myself. Back then, before I'd really even heard of it, I was doing something that could be considered primitive modeling. I understood that computers can be used to model the real world and to predict things. Even then I was doing it. I was 15 years old. And I could make that computer say anything I wanted it to. I could make that model say anything. And if I made it say 10 different outcomes, there was nothing in the world that, except time will tell, that could let you know whether or not any of those 10 were right. And yet these people come out and they say, where is it? Yeah. Okay, there's something to do with a lemming here. Let me find this. Just embarrassing. Look at this tweet. Okay, so somebody points out that the models are junk. They're junk science. Computer model? Really? You're going to shut down a whole society based on a computer model? They do a great job with hurricane predictions, don't they? And tornado predictions? They do a wonderful job. Oh, just because you see hurricanes headed up, past overrunning Puerto Rico and headed for the Florida coast, and they keep telling you it's going to turn north, don't know when, don't know where, don't know if Miami's going to get hit or not, or Fort Lauderdale, but it's going to turn north. It's because of the jet streams. A small, tiny child can figure that out. Those are huge winds that determine the general way that this thing is going to travel at the time. But they can never tell you if it's going to hit Miami or Fort Lauderdale. And all their models are there, and they diverge from each other because they don't know what they're doing. If they didn't have the jet stream to give them a general idea, some of them would be saying it's going to turn around and head towards South America. Some would say it's going to go inland with so much force it's not going to exhaust till it hits Kansas. Computer models. So what did this person say, this lemming, this mindless NPR watcher? It doesn't mean the model is wrong. What it would mean is that we as Americans, by complying with expert advice and government orders, and our heroic, brave medical professionals are outperforming the model. America is undefeated. Now, when I look at that, I have to ask the question, is this person being sarcastic? Do they really believe this? I don't know. I didn't look enough into this. But the point is, what this person's saying here is exactly what you keep hearing. And it's exactly what I said in my videos, published before coronavirus scare. That they will keep... Remember, I gave the example in my first junk science video, my first one. The person who's in the walled city. They're in a walled city, there's only one window, they are posted at that window. They're the expert in charge of securing that window. Thousands of people inside the city. You look out the window and you turn around and you say, the enemy's coming! They're huge! They've got battering rams, they've got arrows! We're all gonna die! And everyone, there's chaos and pandemonium and fear and terror. And then you look out the window and say, well, don't worry, I'm gonna take care of this. And then you say, go away! And then you turn back and you say, hey, they're leaving, they're running away. And then the people take you and put them on their shoulders and carry you around as a hero. But not one of them ever actually looked through the window to see if there was ever a threat in the first place. I used that example at the end of my first junk science video. That is exactly what this person just said here. Well, you can't say the computer models were wrong. They were actually right. It's just that we responded to those models and we obeyed the experts and we hid inside and shut down the economy and the virus ran away. We won. Now again, I don't know if this person's being facetious or what. I can't believe... I can believe that some Americans would fall for that. Because I've seen it my whole life. I wish it wasn't so. Let's see, 2018. In 2018, there were news reports that the flu had hospitals so overwhelmed that they were putting patients outside in tents. The flu. Yet when you actually examine hospitals out here, they don't seem to be quite as overrun as they say it is. What's in your mind when you watch this subverted media, this fake news? Are you picturing something like MASH? Some kind of trauma emergency, just people everywhere? Is that what you're picturing in your mind? If that is, you might want to do some research online, some real research. Look for some recent photos and videos that can be confirmed as such of these hospitals and emergency wards, and look at how busy they are, or if they're just a bunch of empty beds. Because folks, I'm just seeing a bunch of empty beds. It's not to say there might not be a location, a particular hospital that's really busy. That's always the case. Some are more busy than others for a variety of reasons, and they're different sizes anyway. People in the press are totally ignoring contradictory information. Let me find this one here. Okay, so here we go. A fair question. This is a fair question. Someone asked on Twitter. They show the chart here. Now again, I admit I haven't validated this chart, so I'm not giving you details here. I'm not in any position to do the kind of validation I need to do for the most part on these kinds of numbers. But this person says, according to the CDC, overall weekly deaths in this country are at a low. Overall weekly deaths from all causes are at a low. This is because of quarantine. You can't die in a car accident if you're not driving, since car accidents are one of the leading causes of death in the United States. Of course, we'll never ever do anything about that because junk scientists love their cars. And they love their booze. They just don't like smokers. You see how that works. You see how that works. I don't understand how less deaths can have hospitals overflowing with dead bodies. Something doesn't add up. All I'm saying is that is a fair question. And that if those kinds of questions are not entering your mind as you try to navigate this shark-infested media, then you need to take a step back and start looking at reality. Those kinds of questions should be coming up. Those red flags should be going up all the time, especially when you have this poorly run of a health scare. I mean, on one of my tweets, I called it a junk science Pearl Harbor attack, which is exactly what it is. Came out of nowhere. It just took over everything, and we can't find a basis for it. We can't find it. Yeah, there's a disease. Yeah, there's people dying. They may or may not be dying from the virus or from the virus exacerbating some other condition. We're not going to know that for weeks. Like I said, if someone dies, it can take a long time to determine the actual cause of death, to get back toxicology results and things like that. I'm going to show you another clip here real quick. This is from a prophecy update. This is an online church that I enjoy listening to. But Charlie here, he points out something, just another fair question. I'm going to let him speak for himself. Just listen to what Charlie says here and notice one thing. He thought of the question. He recognized they say one thing here and something else is going on here, and they don't match up. Would you have recognized this the way that Charlie did? Here you go.
From Zero Hedge, DHS warns New York City morgues near capacity as local hospitals construct makeshift facilities. Now I'm going to read you the article, and I'm going to tell you the research I did. They have just said that the DHS warns New York City morgues near capacity as local hospitals construct makeshift facilities. They're at near capacity. They said it. New York City morgues are nearing capacity and will be full as soon as next week, according to a DHS spokesperson. Another person familiar with the situation said that the city's hospital morgues hit capacity. They hit capacity sometime over the past week. Meanwhile, the Daily Mail reports that one Manhattan hospital has made up a makeshift morgue in preparation for the surge in coronavirus victims as the city's death toll approaches 200. Okay, you got that, 200. For now, city officials do not seem especially alarmed. Aja Worthy Davis, a spokesperson for the New York City office of the chief medical examiner, said concerns about morgue capacity may be unfounded. Now, DHS just said that this is a crisis, right? She's saying it may be unfounded. In Manhattan alone, she said OCME's morgue can store up to 900 bodies. The city has a morgue for each of the 5 boroughs, she said. We have the ability to expand pretty dramatically, she said. If you look back at what we did during 9/11, we have the ability to create mobile stations that allow us to house bodies if we run out of space. That said, New York City has never dealt with mass casualties at the same rate in history. So they're saying that there are mass casualties in New York City, and at the beginning, the DHS guy said that they're running out of space, okay? And then it says on Wednesday, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said in a briefing that the state is facing an estimated 40,000 ICU cases, but has only 3,000 available beds. So they're making numbers up out of their head, and they're just saying it. Listen to the stats. I Googled it. Yes, everything on Google is true. Well, I went to the sites that handle these things. How many people die in New York every day? In 2015, there were 153,623 that died in New York State. Okay, New York State. That comes to 420.88 a day, with heart disease and cancer as leading causes. On the day this article was published, the article I just read you, on the day that this article was published, there were a total of 285 deaths in the entire state of New York, in the whole state. And they say normally they have 420 die. And most of those deaths were probably of regular death rate. You had some COVID because it was back on, I think, Monday or Tuesday, I did that article. 285 deaths in a day, and they are overloaded. This is scaremongering. This is people trying to get you to think the morgues are full. People are dying and we don't have room for them and it's going to be you next. And it's a lie. It's a complete, total lie. As of now, as of today, as of yesterday when I typed this, there were 606 total COVID deaths in the state of New York. So there you go. It's a complete lie.
Okay, I think that speaks for itself. Now, another thing I talked about, I haven't done any detail on this. This is a whole nother thing, but I do mention from time to time that another thing I studied for just as long, I started studying all this at the same time, was cults and cult mentalities. Within that means that I have studied rhetoric, propaganda, human manipulation, how language is used as a weapon against people. All the tactics of human manipulation. I'm going to show you just one example of this. It's what I would call publish and retract. Okay, and that's when the newspapers, the fake news, the garbage news that should be sued into oblivion because they are not protected by the Constitution when they are not a free press. They are not free. They are controlled by subversive, seditious interests. When that press publishes something that's absolutely wrong and then they retract it, it's the same thing as if you go into a court of law and you make some outrageous statement in front of the jury and the lawyer immediately, Your Honor, I object. That's total speculation. And the judge says, upheld, I agree completely. And he looks at that attorney and says, you be very careful, do not say that. And then he looks at the jury and says, I want you to disregard that last statement. And everybody knows there's no way the jury can disregard what they heard, especially after all that hullabaloo was made about it. It can't be done. Well, junk media does the same thing. They'll publish something that's totally wrong, and then to cover their butts legally, they'll retract it. But you know what? You only saw the original report. You didn't see the retraction that's published on page 942 down there right below the advertisement in the classifieds for used socks. Here's a couple of examples. In Georgia, they listed out this 11-year-old kid who was supposedly the youngest coronavirus victim in that state. Nope, turned out not to be true. So they publish it, but when they go to retract it, what do the people remember? Most of the people out there still think there's some 11-year-old kid who was the youngest coronavirus victim. This one's really horrifying, though. The one where the baby, they said that the baby was the youngest coronavirus victim in that state. And then it turns out the caretaker for the baby accidentally suffocated the baby. That's what really happened. You know, if we had news that actually covered topics other than coronavirus, they might cover such things like, how well do caretakers do with your kids when they're taking care of them? They might do something like that. How well do our educators really do when you send them to school? They might look into something like that. But instead, what do? Coronavirus, coronavirus, coronavirus. So everyone's still, there's probably a whole bunch of people in that state who still think that a baby died from coronavirus. It was suffocated by its own caretaker. Publish and retract. Alright, I'm going to just go through my graphics here because they kind of tell me. Let's see, I have one called Also Bad for Your Health. So this person just made a comment, bad for your health, coronavirus. Also bad for your health, staying inside all day. I would argue sitting in a car seat for more than a week, only stepping outside to go to the bathroom, otherwise only sitting in this seat. Social isolation, losing your job. Not very good for your health. There's a lot of stress there. Believe me. Bankruptcy. Oh, losing your home, for example. The acute stress and anxiety of living under house arrest for an indefinite period of time. I would add, when you haven't committed any crime. And when the perpetrator of that is doing something unconstitutional. Those are pretty bad for your health, too. Something I put in one of my tweets was, as people are, using this stuff by the barrel load, putting this all over their hands, doing this, washing their hands all the time. Guess what, folks? When you do that, you weaken your immune system. You've got to give your immune system something to do, or it falls asleep. It might even start to shut down a bit. If it ain't needed, it isn't going to sit around just like anything else. Are you going to do that? If you get called over to help you at a barn raising, at your friend's barn raising, and you sit there for 8 hours, and for 8 hours they keep telling you to just sit at this picnic table, and you keep saying, "Can I help with this? Can I help raise that? Can I pound those nails?" And they're, "No, we don't need you. We don't need you right now. Hang in there." How many hours of that goes on before you say, "I've got a life to live," and you go somewhere else? That's what your immune system does when you make yourself sterile. People are going to suffer and maybe even die from things that wouldn't even hurt you before because they have cleansed themselves. They've sterilized their environment. One reason I have not been sick in 25, 30 years, however long it's been exactly, is because I'm not afraid to get dirty. I'm not afraid of coronavirus. I'm not afraid to shake people's hands, to get close to them. I'm not afraid of it. I'm never afraid of it. And because of that, my immune system is always on its toes. And guess what? I don't get sick. Just something to think about when the common cold takes you out of work for a couple weeks. How about this one? I already looked at that one. How about, I already looked at that one. Okay, here's one. Coronavirus denier. Okay, this is talking about New York Times retreats. Again, publish and retract. So the New York Times, they published some bogus information about this podcaster. All right, and they call her a coronavirus doubter. I don't really know what's going on specifically here, but that coronavirus doubter, remember in my videos, remember? What was it? It was video number either 2 or 3, because in those I gave you how to identify a junk scientist. One of the ways to identify a junk scientist is they will accuse anyone who disagrees with them of being a denier. Climate change denier. Now, I went over in that video why that is so horrific. I'll let you watch that video to learn why. But here you go, folks. You knew it was coming. Sorry. I was right. Because I've spent 32 years studying these monstrosities, these frauds. Here's another one. I just want to bring this up and show you. This is one of my favorite quotes. It has been one of my favorite quotes my whole life, from Benjamin Franklin. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And how people can hear that and understand what our ancestors did to give us these liberties and just throw them away this easily. I don't want them as my fellow Americans. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase, such as the right to work and earn your own living, essential, law of supply and demand, natural law, you can't violate it without serious consequences. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety, deserve neither liberty nor safety. Ben Franklin already said it all there. I'll leave it at that. All right, here's just a tweet. Let's see. The distinction between dying with coronavirus and dying due to coronavirus is not just splitting hairs. From a UK pathology professor. Okay, there are people here and there peppered throughout academia who have a head on their shoulders, who figure out the obvious. There are a couple out there. This is my point. Did they die with it, or did they die from it? Did the smoker die from cancer, or did they die because they smoked, and smoking caused the cancer? You have absolutely no way to know. Certainly not while they're sitting there in the morgue at the medical examiner's table. It takes a long time to figure out what really happened to that person, and when it comes to did smoking kill you, there's no way to prove it anyway. It can't be done. It isn't possible. Remember the first rule of legitimate science. Science cannot tell you everything. Sorry. It's called real life, and adults deal with that. They don't fill in those unknowns with stupid lies like smoking kills, Or this person died of coronavirus. The person who's been laying in the morgue for 2 or 4 hours, and you're going to write them down. You know for a fact they died because of coronavirus. Just like God. Here's the universe where they had pneumonia and coronavirus. Here's the universe where they only had pneumonia. Would they still die? Only God knows. Here's the second one along those lines from Candace here. So she says, well, state departments of health are reporting the numbers of death before medical examiners have even concluded the cause of death. Well, yeah, I mean, that's basically what I was just saying here a moment ago. It takes medical examiners weeks to determine sometimes. There would be no legitimate way. Now, I love the way she phrases this. There would be no legitimate way to report how many people die daily from this virus. It's a virus that affects people based on what they already have going on. The common cold, just a weak immune system to begin with. They might have AIDS. They might have, who knows what, pneumonia, the common cold. There's no way to tell what's causing what in there. Certainly not within minutes or hours of while the body's still warm. But that's what they're reporting. And that's the kind of idiocy that Governor Walz listened to in his experts. All this destruction of human lives, everything people have worked their whole lives for, destroyed in a few short weeks. Over that. Moving right along. Experts, what's this one? Oh, well, just someone made a note. Nobody will ever trust experts again. And they put experts in quotes, as I always do. The problem is, that's wrong. They will trust experts again. Because the people are so poorly educated, they don't understand what is really going on here. They will fall for this again. Maybe not 3 months later. Maybe it'll still be fresh enough in their mind to realize, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But giving it 3 years? Yeah. It's only been 20 years since 9/11, folks, when they passed the Patriot Act, which was already written when 9/11 happened. Within days. Big. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. Let's see. Head scientist. See, this was a virologist, yeah. Head virologist in Germany. He says that coronavirus may not spread as easily as originally thought. Gee, go figure. Go figure. Maybe just being in the presence of someone with coronavirus is not enough to cause someone else to get it. Gee, who would have thunk it? Certainly not anybody who has had their eyes glued to the fake news. What's this one? Hospitals with empty beds. Okay, I already went over that one. Okay, immediate cause of death. What do I have going on here? Well, this goes back to what Candace was saying. But I made a note here with this thing about, okay, this person died, we're logging it as coronavirus death. And those statistics are going out to all the media, and within minutes they're going to be reported to 400 million people in America. Within minutes. The body's still warm. Are any of you old enough to remember 9/11? If you're not, you might want to, well, they've cleansed the videos from YouTube and such. You're really going to be hard-pressed to find it, to be honest. But if you can find it, when the planes hit, the first plane hit, the second plane hit 15 minutes later, it was within minutes that they were blaming Osama bin Laden. They knew that he did it for a fact. He denied it, but they knew, the media, all the media in America was saying, Osama bin Laden did it. Osama bin Laden did it. Osama bin Laden did it. And I'm not talking about whether or not he did it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, how could they conceivably know? This was a surprise, right? Nobody knew this was coming. How could they know it was him? Especially when he denied it. Same thing here. There's something going on, folks. There's something going on other than what you're seeing. How about this? A junk poll, I call it. So here's a poll. Oh, from CBS. There's a reliable source of information. They have a poll here. It says the top priority for the country should be, according to CBS, who is known to, shall we say, not tell the truth very often, 83% of Americans say, I want to stay home to slow the spread of the virus. And only 17% of all Americans said, I want to get back to work to get the economy going, which something they didn't put in that little note is also I get my income out of it and I can pay my bills and I can feed and support my family like a responsible adult. They didn't actually put that in the title here, but that's implicit. According to CBS, only 17% of the American population said, I want to take care of my family and make sure that they're not going to end up living in a cardboard box or in a car. CBS's polls. They also had a poll. I seem to remember about 4 years ago there was a poll that said something about how, what was it? There's a better chance that the moon is made out of cheese than Donald Trump is going to win the election. I seem to remember a poll along those lines. Their polls mean nothing. These people lie for a living. That's all they do. But the reason I want to show you this is for this reason. It goes back to propaganda and human manipulation. There's a tactic in propaganda called social proof. And I want to read this to you. Now, I'm going to Wikipedia. I'm stuck with this stupid Wikipedia, but this is accurate. And by the way, if you have a chance to read this book, Robert Cialdini, his 84 book called Influence, fantastic book. It'll help teach you how these people are lying and manipulating you. Not just junk scientists, but everybody around you. Social proof, it describes a psychological and social phenomenon wherein people copy the actions of others in an attempt to undertake behavior in a given situation. The next paragraph is more revealing. Social proof is considered prominent in ambiguous social situations. Social situations where you just don't know what to do. Where people are unable to determine the appropriate mode of behavior. I don't know what to do. And it is driven by the assumption that the surrounding people possess more knowledge about the current situation. In other words, if you enter a situation, let's say you go to a party, and it turns out to be a party, it's largely Kenyans there, and they're dressed in those beautiful robes and the hat, the beautiful dress that they have, and they're behaving just differently. The way that they talk, the foods that they eat, the way that they eat, they're behaving differently. If you don't know, you're in a social situation and you don't know what to do, so what do? You look at what other people are doing. It's like, okay, well, I saw that person take this food and just shove it in their mouths, so I'm going to do the same thing. Of course, meanwhile, all the Kenyans are over there going, why are those two idiots shoving that food in their mouth like that? They look like animals. See, social proof is a bad way to figure out how to do things. Bringing you back to this poll. Why do they keep publishing these polls, even though they understand that most of us realize these polls are a bunch of baloney, a bunch of made-up lies? The reason is because there are a large number of Americans who live by social proof. Instead of researching for themselves, learning for themselves, they will look at a poll like this and they'll say, well, geez, looks like everybody's in favor of staying at home to stop the spread of the virus. Nobody's in favor of doing the responsible thing and going out and feeding your own family through your own work, taking charge of your own life and your family's lives. Nobody's wants to do that. I feel like I want to do that, but I don't want to be the only person who's standing up and saying, I'd rather go to work. So I'm going to use social proof, and I'm just going to follow the crowd and stay at home. Ditto with these polls. See, it wasn't that the polls were wrong. The polls were lying in 2016. Like I told you from the beginning, I knew Donald Trump was going to win because I don't watch television. It was more than obvious that Donald Trump was going to win. I didn't have any slightest fear I had a major fear of Clinton being president, but I didn't see how that was going to happen until election night when I sat down and the only thing I could listen to was NPR. And all of a sudden I hear something that was totally different than my whole experience over the last year because I never listened to NPR. They're liars and manipulators. And everything I hear on there is just, just waiting to hand the crown over to Hillary. Let's just go through the formality of the selection. It's kind of pointless, but we got to do it. We're Americans. Basically what they're saying. And I'm just thinking, what? Trump's going to win this thing. How can you even... what planet are these people on? And what do you know? Trump took the whole thing easily. And they're all just, and they've been freaking out ever since, and they've been doing everything they can to hurt Trump ever since. And what do you think the exploitation of coronavirus is doing? Hurting Trump. The problem is they're killing Americans. We already have reports of, there was an old woman who was beaten because she didn't practice social distancing. They punched an old woman and killed her. Murder. Where's that one going to go in the epidemiologist logbook? The suicides are starting. People killing themselves out of fear and terror or just depression over the fact that everything they've worked their whole life for is being taken away from by, a governor who doesn't know what they're doing, who trusts experts, who have like a 50, 70-year history of lying and being fraudulent. What else we got? Okay, here's Las Vegas. Again, look at that. Predatory landlords still harassing tenants at a record pace, despite the governor's eviction moratorium. Just sickening. I've said from the beginning of this, there's going to be a massive redistribution of wealth. There's going to be a lot of people out there who are laughing their heads off at me. People who would walk by and drive by and go, ew, a homeless person. And they're going to lose their homes. That's how easy it is, folks. That's how easy it is. I've been there. You need to wise up before you lose everything the way I did. And I didn't lose it because I wasn't wise. I lost it because everyone in Minnesota was such a lazy bum. They wouldn't listen to me when I was telling the truth. I knew what was going on. Watch my video for training police officers if you want to see what happened there. Alright, what else we got here? Minnesota. Okay, now I have not validated these, so I'm giving you to them at face value. Don't know if they're accurate or not, but they do. It's a juxtaposition. It's kind of meant to manipulate you in a way emotionally, even though it's on the same side as me. I'll just let you know up front. But look at this. The Minneapolis newspaper 12 days ago said 2.4 million infected. And the actual was 865. Now, I honestly don't even quite understand what they're talking about there. They're not specifying. I think what they were saying was our governor was telling us that based on the models, the computer models, 15 years old, I learned to make models on computers. 15 years old. Make them say anything I wanted to. He's being told 2.5 million people will be infected in Minnesota. 12 days ago, 2 weeks ago. He shuts down everything, costs this homeless man his job. 865 was the real number. Of course, the other people are going to say, oh, that's because he shut down society. See, it's working. It's working. Right. 74,000 will die, and I remember seeing that. I remember seeing this governor say that what I saw was 70,000 are going to die if we don't do something. Really? So far at this time, 24. Median age of fatalities, 86 years old. People who have literally lived twice as long as probably 95% of the human species that has ever lived since the beginning of time. People who died of old age when they're in their 30s and 40s. If you're in your 50s, you're just an old salt. They have to carry you around with your beard and your cane. These people are living twice that long. They're dying from something that kills people who are that age. Pneumonia, the cold, flu, coronavirus. And they're shutting down everything. Someone who hasn't been sick in 25, 30 years loses his job over this. Our governor is absolutely incompetent. Absolutely incompetent. And I mean, I don't know if I'm going to survive this, because one reason I wanted to make this video is because I may not be able to continue things for much longer. But I'm trying to set the stage to make sure that that man in St. Paul, or wherever he's hiding, that is, that he will be held accountable in a court of law, as he should be. As he should be. I called his office immediately, and when I spoke to his aide there, all she could do was sit there and sing his praises. Oh, he's the most empathetic man I've ever met. He's just blah, 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 blah. Like they're having an affair or something, the way she's talking about him. And then she pretends to care so much about this homeless guy. Let me give you my cell phone number. You know, that way you can call me if you have any needs. It was like a couple days later, I called that number, and I deal with phone numbers all the time, so I double check numbers all the time. I can't remember specifically if I did here, but I probably did because I double check numbers all the time. It's part of my MO, always. Number was out of service. It wasn't a working number that she gave me. That's our governor's office. That's how much they care about the homeless. Osteo-phobia. Not paying rent. Let's see here. Scary. Almost 20% in a poll of 15,000 people did not pay their rent mortgage. 1/5 of the people in America did not or could not pay their mortgage or their rent. Now again, I don't know if that's true. It's a poll. Polls are suspect from the beginning, but it sure sounds plausible based on what I'm seeing out there and just common sense. 1/5 of the people cannot pay their rent, their mortgage, and this shutdown is somehow benefiting us more than if we didn't shut down? Really? What's the point of being alive if you're alive living like me in a car or in a cardboard box, having lost everything you worked your entire life for, possibly including your family, through divorce, suicide, familial breakup, stress? Alright, I'm not going to show you the video. I'm not going to show you the artwork for this one. This is from when I had to sicken my stomach and go to the Star Tribune and the Pioneer Press websites. Pioneer Press had this story, the first victim. Meet the first victim of coronavirus. You know, of course, you can't go up there and shake his hand because that's not social distancing, and also because he's dead. But they put him in here. They show a picture of him smiling with his wife. Oh my gosh. And believe me, I feel horrible for his wife. There's nothing I love more than a couple that's been together for a long time. I don't want anything breaking them up. Nothing. Seeing an old couple walking down the street still holding hands, geez, most beautiful thing there is. And I don't mean to make light of this gentleman's death, but the problem is, look what it said. Oh, where is it? He was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2018. Suffered from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Fell ill. Tested positive for... The guy had lung cancer and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Which, I don't even know if that's... I'm not even going to go there. That's a coronavirus death? Really? Seems to me something else was kind of going on there. Something that was affecting, I don't know, his respiratory system. Maybe the common cold would have caused the same thing that coronavirus supposedly did here. Folks, this is lunacy. This is lunacy. Alright, here we go. Today, I haven't heard it yet. It was a couple hours ago. Governor Walz to address all Minnesotans at 2 p.m. on additional coronavirus restrictions. After everything I just told you in this video, how can I not... How can I describe a person like that without using strong names? I don't want to be a name caller. I don't want to do that. That doesn't make me look good. It doesn't help me. It doesn't hurt him for me to call names. But I don't know how else to describe somebody like that. Everything I've just told you here, which only scratches the surface of the lies that are finally being exposed about this health scare, and the guy wants additional coronavirus restrictions. Hasn't he destroyed enough lives? Just leave it at that. Just leave it at that. Then just to inject maybe a little humor in this, I came up with a tweet. It occurred to me, they say that all these masks are, there's such a shortage of masks, for all these empty hospitals and such. So I got thinking, well, like with NASCAR, those guys wearing the suits, they've got every corporate logo around there. Since all these corporations, non-profit for the most part, NPR, PBS, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, the CDC. Maybe you're seeing a pattern here. Why don't they all advertise on these things and put their logo on it? So I came up with this picture of me putting my logo or whatever, since there's no easy way to find my channel, on this mask. This is how ludicrous it is. I mean, you couldn't make, if you made a movie of what's going on here and it was an omniscient, you came at it omniscient, so you knew what both sides were doing, the people who were running the scare and the people who were being terrified, you'd probably at some point turn it off. You'd probably just go, this is so stupid. I mean, unless it was really entertaining and it had great actors or something, or a musical with great songs and dance, you'd probably get bored with it and just say, this is dumb. I mean, I understand you have to suspend, you know, disbelief and let reality go when you watch a movie, but this is ludicrous. I mean, this is just so this is just an exercise in human stupidity. This isn't even scary. There's no catastrophe here. There's not even the threat of a catastrophe here, except for people talking about a threat of catastrophe. I mean, it's just craziness, people. It's craziness. God bless you all, and I hope you all stay safe from what your government is doing to you. You got to stand up for yourselves now. I hope this video helps give you cause to do that. Take care of yourselves. Thanks for watching.